Hello. Here we are with the immune chapter. Now, you might notice that this is a different picture. Yes, this is from a different textbook. The slideshow is, anyway, from a different textbook. You still have your textbook, so don't panic. And everything in this chapter that I'm going to talk to you about is also in your textbook. You will be able to find it. It might not be in exactly the same order, and the pictures might be a little bit different. But immunity is immunity. It really doesn't matter which textbook it is. And I don't have the PowerPoints from this textbook. I have not been in my office since I don't know when, April maybe. So, like everything else in life these days, I need to adjust. Also, I was in conversation with somebody else, one of you, and I guess that what has not been announced by the college yet is that the fall semester for Tarrant County College, at least, and this only applies to Tarrant County College, is going to be 100% online. So no face-to-face. And anyway, so I'm not sure why they haven't announced that yet, but that's the way it's going to be. So, what the heck? So, there we go. So the immune system, our friend, the immune system. Where would we be without it? Well, dead is the answer to that. The immune system protects us from infectious agents. Infectious agents are those things that would want to harm us, not, like I said, for any particular reason. They just want to settle down and raise a family. And most of us don't want that to happen inside of our bodies. It's a job of our immune system to hunt these things down and take care of them. Also, harmful substances, things that are toxic, snake venom, mosquito bite stuff, dangerous chemicals, typically without our awareness. So this happens whether we don't even know about. Most of the time, we have no idea of the epic battle taking place inside our bodies. Pick your favorite fantasy movie. No, not that one. I'm talking about something like Lord of the Rings. Shake my head, you people. So, like in Lord of the Rings, you have the epic battle between the forces of evil, Mordor, and the forces of good, Gondor, and the elves, and the horsemen of wherever they're from, Rohirrim, and they have an epic clash in the third Lord of the Rings movie, and that's what's going on inside of our body, typically without our knowledge. It's a multi-layered, multi-pronged system, and it's composed of numerous cellular, molecular, and even our number one defense is our skin, which combine all together to provide us with immunity. And not only that, but it's adaptable. It can adapt to or defend us against many different kinds of infectious agents. And so let's go through some of those infectious agents. Here they are. Organisms that cause damage or death to the host organism. That doesn't sound good. If they cause harm, it's said to be pathogenic, right? Pathogenic, genic, to cause, to create, patho, some kind of pathology or sickness. 5 major categories. If it was going in order of size, it would list viruses first, then bacteria, then fungi, then protozoans, and then molecular parasites. So let's peel back the curtain and look inside and see a little bit about each one. The bacteria. These are single-celled prokaryotic organisms. That means that they don't have one cell. That's pretty obvious. Prokaryotes, they're the cell type then that does not have a nucleus, and they are relatively simple compared to a eukaryotic cell like the ones that make us up. I say relatively simple because they're still not simple. Some people will use the phrase, even the simplest bacteria that can do that. And I said, the thing's alive. It ain't so simple. If it's so simple, make one. I can't do it. I don't know anybody that can. Never heard of it. They've been trying for years. Um, they are, so they're small, but not as small as a virus. They are smaller than a white blood cell, usually. There's some that are big. They have a plasma membrane and a cell wall around the outside. And that cell wall is made of a variety of different things, and there's at least two major types. And when you take microbiology, one of the very first things you learn is called a gram stain. Gram, like the weight, like the mass measurement. The gram stain, named after, you got it, a gram. No, somebody named Gram came up with this stain that will break down the bacteria into two different types called gram positive and gram negative. If it takes the gram stain, it's gram positive. If it doesn't, it's, well, I'm not going to get into that. That's for your micro class, but that gives you an idea of what the cell wall component is made of. And it acts to protect the bacterium. So while we're at it, bacterium with an M is singular. You would use that to refer to one cell. Bacteria is plural. So they come in multiple shapes. I'm not really going to be able to draw that. Suggest that you Google image this. Coxy, that's how you pronounce that word, coxy, or coxiform is a shape that's spherical, round like a circle. Rod-like or bacilliform, what is a rod? It's just something elongated. Well, there we go. And spirilla, like a corkscrew that some people would use to open a bottle of wine. Not me. My wine comes in twist-off caps or a box because I'm cheap like that. So, yeah, go ahead and take a look. Google image this for yourself, and so you have an idea of that. The cell wall is a barrier that needs to be overcome if we're going to treat bacterial infections with an antibiotic. We've got to get the medicine inside the cell, so it's got to be able to defeat the cell wall and be able to diffuse inside the cell. And another thing that's a common misperception is antibiotics. Antibiotics don't kill the bacteria necessarily, most of them anyway. What most of them do is find a weakness in the bacteria and exploit it. You see, this epic battle that's going on when we have a bacterial infection is a battle between our immune system and how fast our immune system can kill off the bacteria, and the bacteria and how fast they can grow. And when we talk about bacterial growth, we're not talking about a bacteria, growing and large and getting bigger and, eating a diner or something. There's a movie about that, The Blob. Scared me to death when I was a kid. No, we're talking about numbers. So one bacterium divides 2 and divides into 4, 8, 16, and how fast the bacteria can multiply and how fast our immune system can kill them off, that balance determines the winning and the losing here of this epic battle. And antibiotics generally inhibit bacterial growth somehow or another. It slows them down, and that allows our immune system to come in and win the battle. For instance, one of the more common antibiotics, penicillin, attacks the cell wall. If the cell wall is a protective force for the bacterium, it like a fence around the outside. Imagine a chain link fence that wasn't attached to the posts, and penicillin inhibits that cell wall formation, making it easier for immune system to defeat. I can go on and on and on about bacteria and antibiotics. I really should. I'm going to say this, just throw this out there, that antibiotics are becoming less and less effective because the bacteria mutate and form immunities to the antibiotics. And it's a really huge deal. And it's a bad deal right now. We're losing. We have not come up with a new class, a new category of antibiotic in 25 years. And so right now the bacteria are becoming resistant to the antibiotics faster than we're coming up with them. And really, a world without effective antibiotics is a very, very scary world. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Bacteria have something called virulence. That's their ability to cause serious illness. A more virulent bacteria is going to cause a more serious illness. The Yersinia bacterium that causes the Black Plague, that's a highly virulent bacteria. And one of the reasons why is that it's got this extra capsule around the outside of its cell wall. That's one of the reasons. It can also release toxins or poisons. Sometimes it's the toxins and poisons that cause us more of a problem than the bacteria itself. It's a problem with food spoilage. When food goes bad and makes somebody sick, it's oftentimes, it can be the bacteria, but it also can be the proteins that it leaves behind. Let's see, Streptococcus causes strep throat. Tuberculosis is bacteria born. It's a very small bacteria. It's a respiratory disease. It stays in the air a long time. People with tuberculosis cough a lot. Back in the old days, they used to call tuberculosis consumption, and lots and lots of people died of consumption, tuberculosis. It was a very serious problem. Not so much anymore because we have antibiotics, but now there are strains of tuberculosis that are resistant to all known antibiotics. So tuberculosis, not to diminish the effects of the COVID virus, but tuberculosis is quite a bit more virulent. Lyme disease. Now what? Lyme. Oh, that's not the kind of Lyme you would have with a Corona beer. It's the kind of Lyme that is named after, I think the city is in New England somewhere where it was first discovered. Typically, pathogenic agents are named for where they're discovered, hence Lyme disease. I think it's Connecticut. Ebola was named for the Ebola River in the Congo. Now is the former Zaire. So that's when you hear people talk about the coronavirus as if they were following typical naming convention, they would call it the Wuhan corona, but they don't. Viruses are not cells, they're viral particles. We had a whole section on viruses, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that here. Just to review, they have a protein capsid or shell, and that can still, like the coronavirus, still has a polysaccharide cover around the outside of that capsid shell, and then inside is some kind of DNA, genetic material, either DNA or RNA. Right, and so there might be that membrane like the coronavirus has. They're much, much smaller than bacteria. They are obligate intracellular parasites. What does that mean? All right, so they're parasites. A parasite is a type of symbiosis. The term symbiosis means living together. Bios, living, sim, together. And there are a variety of symbiotic relationships. I like to think that my wife and I have a symbiotic relationship where we live together, and it's mutual. Well, we do live together. So it's mutualistic, meaning that it's good for me and it's good for her. I hope you find yourself in a mutualistic symbiotic relationship where it's good for you and it's good for the people you live with. A parasitic relationship is good where it's good for one and bad for the other. Um, like a virus or a pathogenic bacteria. So parasites, you think of a parasite like what, a leech or something, but it doesn't have to be something like that. All right, so parasitic is symbiosis where it's bad for one and good for the other. Intracellular, inside, within a cell. Obligate, that means they have to. They don't have any choice. So they must enter the cell in order to reproduce. And we talked about that already. The lytic cycle, where the genetic material goes inside the cell and hijacks the cell, turns it into a virus factory, and then finally kills the cell by bursting. And so that's the best time to get the virus. It's hard. It's tough to get an individual viral particle because they're so small and they're in such numbers. It can be done, but the best time to get the virus is get the cell that's been infected and kill it before it can spread. Let's see, causes different diseases. Once again, we talked about the specificity of the cell and the receptor that each virus has to find. The common cold, the chicken pox, HIV. Now, you guys all probably had the chicken pox vaccine. I didn't. They didn't have a chicken pox vaccine when I was a child. And so we did. It was just a rite of passage. You hear people having COVID parties, or that's kind of weird because COVID viruses can be deadly. But when I was a kid, it was just it was just something that happened to you. Speaking of the wife, there she is. She just got home. Hi, Penny. I hope the class says hi too. The class. She says hi, class. My wife just came home from work. Yeah, I got the chicken pox when I was in first grade. I'm the oldest of three kids. I came home. My sisters got it too. Now the chicken pox, you defeat the chicken pox, and then it goes dormant, and it can later on in life reemerge and cause shingles, which is horrible, and I don't want those. There's a vaccine now to prevent shingles, but my physician told me I'm too young. I think the only person that's told me I was too young for anything in a long time. Fungi. Hey, I'd like to think I'm a fun guy. I think this is a fungal infections. The fungi are eukaryotes, so they have all the cellular machinery that we do, and they also have a cell wall made out of a polymer of glucose called chitin, which is a lot like this glucose molecule is linked together, but each glucose has an amino group attached to it, and it's strong and it's tough and it's like a suit of armor. And that makes getting medicines inside the cell, antifungal medicines, much more difficult. Uh-oh. What? Oh, that's interesting. You were feeding him? Yeah, I was giving him pizza. Oh, pizza crust. Seems like the dog got confused between the hand and the pizza crust that she had for lunch. I made pizza last night. I'm not going to lie. Came out good. Make it from scratch myself. Because I used to be a pizza guy. I made one that was, I grilled up some Italian sausages in the cast iron skillet in the oven and sliced them and put them on one pizza with mushrooms, and then on the other one I sliced meatballs and used cheddar cheese. So it's meatball, cheddar cheese, and red onion from my garden. And so we both had that for lunch today. Yummo. And then now the dog had some lunch and some finger. So it was an accident. So this cell wall made out of chitin that surrounds the fungal cells, literally like an extra layer of protection. And the fungus The fungus, the way the fungus works is that they don't consume their food. They release proteolytic enzymes. So what does that word mean? Lytic, to break proteins. And so when the fungus finds a food source, it secretes these enzymes extracellularly, and then that dissolves more or less its food source, and then they absorb it. Doesn't sound like as much fun. We ingest our food. That's one of my favorite things, like pizza. And it being Tuesday, speaking of food, you know what's for dinner? Mm-hmm. That's right. I'm making Baja shrimp tacos. So you take some shrimp, marinate them in lime juice and some chili spice, and then fry them in said cast iron skillet with some Baja sauce, which is mayonnaise, sour cream, lime juice, and a little bit of chopped cilantro on a flour tortilla with a little bit of shredded red cabbage. Taco Tuesday. All right. So that really, I'm going to consume that by eating my shrimp tacos. That seems a lot more fun than secreting digestive enzymes and basically leaning on it like a fungus would have to do. So fungal diseases usually limited to artificial superficial infections, but not always. Fungi can cause pericarditis. Fungi can cause meningitis and encephalitis. Those are serious infections, not only for where they are, but because defeating a fungus is difficult. Ringworm is not a worm. It's actually a fungal infection that causes a ring. Athlete's foot is caused by a fungus, toenail fungus. And now think about this: if you ever get one of those kind of infections, it's actually your body is being consumed, literally eaten, dissolved by the fungus and absorbed. Jock itch is athlete's foot of the crotch area. Then there's the vaginal yeast infection. All right, yeast is a fungus. And then histoplasmosis of the blood. That's pretty bad. Then we get protozoans. What protozoan is? Zoa is animal, and proto means before or primitive. And so these protozoans are usually single cells, usually small, animal-like protists. So they're not in the animal kingdom. They're not in the plant. They're not in the fungi. They're in the kingdom Protista. Disease examples. Let's go with malaria. Malaria is a parasitic worm, very small, multicellular worm, that's transmitted by the most dangerous organism on the planet, responsible for more human deaths than any other animal, the mosquito. And so the way that works, I don't know if I told you that during the blood chapter. I told you the malaria story. Then we get multicellular parasites, even though the malarial parasite is multicellular. But these are not the ones that are not microscopic. Parasitic worms, such as tapeworms, or roundworms, which, guess what, are round, that typically can infect the intestinal tract. There are 3 kinds of worms on our planet, and one of them is the regular kind of worm, the segmented worm that you might use to go fishing, earthworm. Then there's the flatworms in a group of animals, phylum of animals known as Platyhelminthes. Remember, platy means flat. They're the flatworms. Tapeworm is such a flatworm. And then roundworms are in the phylum Nematoda. And they can get into the digestive system and cause some serious trouble in there. And prions. Prions are not cells, they're not viruses, they're proteins that have gone crazy. And still not really well understood that means we don't know how they actually work. What they kind of do is they go around, they're corrupt proteins that can go around and corrupt other proteins. And they are transmissible. We have Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is spread from cows to humans by consuming infected meat. So it's basically mad cow disease in people, and it eats away the brain. All right, that looks like a good place to stop. So, Alvida Zane,